You can't reason somebody out of something they weren't reasoned into.
But you've practiced it a lot.
Yeah, but that's just false.
Oh.
You can reason people out of their deeply held beliefs.
We've got Sam Harris again. Best comebacks, best arguments, witty rebuttals. We're gonna dive right in. Please go and click like and subscribe right now, and then I'm gonna hit play right now.
Human flourishing arises out of the laws of nature. In some way, our experience of the world is constrained by the laws of nature, and therefore every way of living isn't the equivalent of every other way of living. Forcing women to wear burqas is not the same thing as giving them a choice of what to wear. It has different consequences. And I think we deny that at our peril, and we deny it. What's the irony here is that it's an astonishing failure of compassion on the part of liberals to claim the sanctimonious high ground of being sensitive to people's religion and not connect with the abject suffering, the abject and unnecessary suffering of the millions and millions of people who, disproportionately women, who suffer under Islam at this moment.
Wow.
Many people think that based on, I don't know if it was George Bernard Shaw or Mark Twain, or I think they've both alternately been credited with this quote, but you can't reason somebody out of something they weren't reasoned into.
But you've practiced it a lot.
Yeah, but that's just false. I mean, you can reason people out of their deeply held beliefs that they didn't reason themselves into, but they're just acquired with mother's milk. Or they reason themselves into, and they can reason themselves out of it, just based on some continued conversation.
And do you do that with questions, or you do that with stubbornness?
Well, you do it by continuing the conversation, and as long as, I mean, this is the crucial matter for me is, can we talk about it?
Stubbornness. Is this a bad faith question? Alarm bell goes off when I hear that. When he's asking something with a negative connotation to it when another word could have been used. Persistence, maybe. Or patience. There's a good one. Patience. I wonder what's going on.
Now, there are certain people who are saying, listen, we can't talk about it. If you say X, Y, and Z, I'm just going to come and kill you. Right? That's the really clear line between the 21st century and the 14th century, right? And we have to hold that line. And there are many, many liberals, far too many liberals, on this campus and every other, and in every journal, with prime offenders like The Guardian and The Nation and Salon. I mean, the people who are just giving away our freedoms with both hands, desperate to do it, and will condemn as a bigot anyone who complains. And that's so we have a battle for civilization right here that has nothing to do with suicide bombers. It has to do with people just totally losing the plot ethically and politically, and intellectually. But yeah, it's just you have to keep putting pressure on bad ideas, because that's the thing about bad ideas. They don't respond well to pressure. People have internal contradictions in their lives that they can notice because they're, do you think prayer works? Many people say yes, absolutely, I think prayer works. And then you say, okay, well, we have a new airline where the pilots are just going to rely on prayer to land the planes. Tickets will be cheap, and you can sign up. Who's going to sign up for that airline? If the pilot comes over the PA system and tells you that he's convinced that prayer is all he needs to land this plane, you're just going to see just stark terror on the faces of even the most religious people. And so that's a contradiction that can be pointed out. And we have to do that 1,000-fold and just keep doing it. But as you say, global warming, evolution, these are the jury's not out on questions, and many people just don't subscribe, and it's a failure of conversation ultimately.
Now, someone who spent the last 2 years criticizing religious faith
I've become quite familiar with how people of faith rise to the defense of God. As it turns out, there are not 100 ways of doing this. There appear to be just 3. Either you argue that a specific religion is true, or you argue that religion is useful, or you attack atheism as intolerant, elitist, or otherwise corrosive of basic human values. Now, the only line of argument that is relevant to this debate, or indeed any debate about the validity of religion, is an argument that religion is true. Or rather, that one religion is true, because of course they can't all be true. In fact, our opponents here stand for 2 distinct and mutually incompatible faiths. Was Jesus Christ the Messiah? The rabbi and Dinesh are not likely to agree on that point. As Bertrand Russell pointed out over 100 years ago, even if we knew one of the Earth's religions was true, perfectly true, given the multiplicity of faiths, given their mutual incompatibility, all believers should expect damnation purely as a matter of probability. But before I go deeper into this issue of religion's truth, I just want to illustrate how confused a person must be to argue that it is reasonable to believe in God because religion is useful, because it gives life meaning, because it makes people more moral than they otherwise would be, as the rabbi suggested, because it makes people happy, any of the benefits you could imagine of religion. Okay, imagine you're walking down the street and you run into an old friend, and he looks radiantly happy. You ask him what's going on in his life, and he tells you that everything changed for him the day he realized that he was destined to marry Angelina Jolie. It might occur to you to ask, why does he believe this? I mean, Angelina Jolie is, after all, one of the most beautiful and famous people on the planet. She's not incidentally married to Brad Pitt. They have something like 27 children at this point. Okay, what if your friend, sensing your skepticism, said, clearly don't understand. This belief gives my life meaning. Okay, I now know my purpose in life. It's to be Angelina's husband. What if your friend said that this belief has made me a better person? I'm now incredibly kind to children, anticipating having to raise Angelinas once Brad leaves. Or what if your friend said to you, you can believe whatever you want, but I wouldn't want to live in a universe where I don't marry Angelina Jolie. Okay, it should be quite clear at this point that your friend has lost his mind. Okay, it's probably a dangerous person, and yet this is precisely the kind of talk that so often passes for wisdom in religious circles and may attempt to pass for wisdom here. Certainly the morality argument is of that sort. People can't seem to see that, for one, that we're talking about ideas and their consequences. And everything we say about Islam or Islamism or jihadism, or depending on what the focus is, conservative Islam, applies to white converts to the faith, and it applies to people in 100 different countries and of a wide variety of ethnicities. If ever I say something disparaging about Islam compared to Hinduism or Buddhism, well, then that has nothing to do with racism or the colors of people's skin. I mean, so racism and bigotry against people based on ethnicity or the country they're born, that has nothing to do with this conversation at all. And so this meme of Islamophobia that has been thrown up to prevent conversations of this kind.
Just to interject, he said the meme of Islamophobia. What's funny is he probably understands meme in terms of the original definition from Richard Dawkins, who's also one of the new atheist people, which Sam Harris is one of them. He said that meme is like, it's a gene, but for like genetic information. It's like a gene of genetic information, but for cultural information. So he's probably discussing the idea of Islamophobia as like a unit of cultural information there, not necessarily as something downplayed, something silly, something that people just share on social media. He's probably using meme in that sense, though.
Is really quite destructive, and it's something that, I mean, the hypocrisy here should be just shattering to liberals in particular, because you have as much as
some of these people really don't look happy. Is anyone smiling? Dude in the bottom left looks like I don't know what he looks like, Jesus.
Said we are abandoning the women and the freethinkers and the gays and the public intellectuals and the apostates these are the most vulnerable people on earth in Muslim societies, where you have atheist bloggers, or not even atheist bloggers, just secular bloggers.
People like Raif Badawi.
Getting hacked to death,
Wow.
And liberals are not only not giving them any tools by which to better their lives, they are castigating the people who are trying to shine a light on the disproportionate nature of the problem here. To be gay, or even a woman in a country like Afghanistan, or Saudi Arabia, or Bangladesh, I mean, these are unlucky places to be in a minority of that kind.
Damn.
And so it's as we argue at some length in the book, liberalism has really failed us here. And it's not, and you can criticize Christianity all you want, and liberals will never bat an eye. You can criticize Mormonism all you want, but the moment you try to shine a light on the problem of, I think, appropriately described as Islamism for this conversation, just the full armamentarium of political correctness and cries of racism just hits you full in the face, and it is a thankless job. Nobody wants to do this. Nobody wants to have this conversation because it is so poisonous.
Wow.
So it seems to me that certain moral intuitions begin to relax once you take this picture of scientific causality on board. When you have to admit that even the most terrifying people are at some basic level unlucky to be who they are. The logic of hating them, as opposed to fearing them and restraining them, begins to break down. And once again, this is true even if you believe that every human being harbors a soul. To be born with the soul of a psychopath is to be unlucky. So one consequence of this view...
I think that people who believe in spirituality, in the soul, things like that, I don't think they think that the soul can be sociopathic or psychopathic. I think they believe that that would be on the level of psychology, which is outside of the soul. That's something on top of the soul, you could say. Michael Neal specifically says that your psychology isn't the foundation of who you are. Underneath that is your soul, and that your psychology and the truths and beliefs and things like that, or thoughts and feelings, sorry, not truths and beliefs, thoughts and feelings, and that psychology, that's all outside of the soul. And going into the soul and recognizing the soul as part of the spiritual doctrine. So psychopathy and I understand that as being part of psychology.
Or so I suggest, is that it reduces hatred. Actually, in my view, completely undercuts the logic of hatred. It also increases empathy and compassion. Take an example, which I should probably get a new example, but the example of the worst person who's ever lived, in my mind, at the moment, is Uday Hussein. He's not objectively the worst, but he's about as odious a person as I can think of. He was one of Saddam's eldest sons. He used to, when he would see a wedding in progress in Baghdad, he would descend with his thugs and rape the bride, just for the fun of it. Sometimes he would torture and kill the bride. He did this more than once. Whatever you think about the ethics of the war in Iraq, it seems to me pretty obvious that given that we couldn't capture him and stop him from doing these things, it was good that we killed him. I mean, unless you are a total pacifist, it seems to me that you have to admit this is what guns are for. To shoot people like Uday Hussein. But simply walk back the timeline of his life. Imagine him as a 4-year-old boy. He could have been a creepy little boy, no doubt. It's quite possible there are child psychopaths, but he was also a very unlucky one. I mean, he had Saddam Hussein as a father. How unlucky can you get?
Yikes.
He was the 4-year-old boy who was going to become the psychopath Uday Hussein, through no fault of his own. Now, and if we could have intervened at any point there, at 4, at 5, at 6, at 7, that would have been the right thing to do, and compassion would have been the right motive. When would compassion stop being the right motive? Would it be wrong to feel compassion for the 18-year-old Uday Hussein? I don't think so. He's just as unlucky as the 4-year-old. So ironically, if you want to be like Jesus and love your enemies, or at least not hate them, this is a doorway into compassion for even the worst people who have ever lived. Taking a wider picture of scientific causality into view.
Wow.
Now, one caveat is that this is not to say that this would be an easy view to adopt if you or someone you love was the victim of a violent crime. I'm not saying that in the heat of the moment you should be able to view the world this way, but in our more dispassionate moments, when it comes time to make public policy or to think about ethical norms, I think this is the view we need to take.
The truth is that religion, as we speak of it, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, is based on the claim that God dictates certain books. He doesn't code software, he doesn't produce films, he doesn't score symphonies, he is an author. And this claim has achieved credibility because these books are deemed so profound that they could not possibly have been written by human authors. Please consider for a moment how differently we treat scientific claims and texts and discoveries. Isaac Newton went into isolation for 18 months starting in the year 1665. When he came out of his solitude, he had invented the calculus. He had discovered the laws of motion and universal gravitation. He had single-handedly created the field of optics. No one thinks that this was anything other than a man's labor. And it took 200 years of continuous ingenuity on the part of some of the smartest people who ever lived to substantially improve upon Newton's work. How difficult would it be to improve the Bible? Anyone in this room could improve this supposedly inerrant text scientifically, historically, ethically, spiritually, in moments.
Spiritually.
God loves us and wanted to guide us with a book of morality. It's very strange to have given us a book that supports slavery.
Improving it spiritually is a different thing. Improving it ethically, that's already a contentious claim, but improving it spiritually, that's pretty intense. A lot of these religions, the classic religions, they have like weird random rules and things that seem like really weird to our eyes in our modern context. I'm not going to comment on that exactly, but I will say to claim that you could easily spiritually improve the Bible is a pretty strong claim.
That demands that we murder people for imaginary crimes like witchcraft. The true basis for hope in our world is open-ended conversation, and religion has shattered our world into competing moral communities. What we have to convince ourselves of is that love and curiosity is enough for us, and intellectual honesty is the guardian of that. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you for watching. That was Sam Harris. Please leave a comment, subscribe, like, do whatever you want. Thank you so much for watching to the end. I'm going to see you in the next video. Thank you very much.